So, hello everybody. We are live on YouTube. Welcome, sir, to our show. And I will give over the turn to Shan. Shan, please carry on with your part, and then we will go as it flows. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, a very good evening to one and all. Red Lantern Analytica is an international affairs observer group based out of New Delhi, India. It focuses on critical issues related to China with a special focus on Sino-Indian relations, issues of national security, international security, energy, and environment. The main aim of our organization is to draw in India's foremost academic institutions and security intelligentsia, corporate institutions, monetary establishments, and experts in discussion on India's foreign policy and extend the country's role in global issues. To maximize the institutional and scholarly capacity of strategic thinking in India, we are required to integrate expertise in our research in order to foster an even-minded international strategy for India. This is a young organization that is in constant search for fresh ideas and thoughts in the strategic studies discourse. With this goal in mind, we have set ourselves up as an autonomous and solid international strategy think tank. We are an intellectual startup functioning with a small number of individuals who are passionate about international affairs. So now Arshi, our moderator today, is a graduate and postgraduate in political science and carries interest in public administration and is currently enhancing her analytical abilities as an intern and research scholar with Red Lantern Analytica. So I would like Arshi to take over the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. And the Red Lantern Analytica team honors your presence, sir, today with us. And we are also grateful for the donation of masks to Indian Embassy that you did. That's how we got connected too. And before we move ahead with our interactive interview, I would also like to give a brief about what we are going to discuss here. Just a
Please.
moment. I am not sure if I'm like, am I visible or not? Because I think I'm not right now.
Arshi, you are
I
visible.
should be visible now. I'm not visible?
Not yet.
All right. I'm trying to. There's some problem with the internet.
Please take your time.
Arshi, I think you can carry on for now. Pose the first question to sir, and as soon as sir starts answering, then work on your webcam. All right? Else we will be losing out on the minutes.
Okay, I think my webcam is cam is already. Yes,
No problem. You
certainly.
carry on with
So
your.
I'd like to brief about our discussion today. So we are going to talk about talk about the communist ideology that is being implemented by the Communist Party of China, and execute is not easy. But let's understand here, we are aware that the illegal occupation by China is not Tibet or Taiwan or India's Ladakh, Galwan Valley region. But there is a region that is not having a very high reach right now. People are probably not aware of it, and that is Manchuria. And Manchuria right now is who is looking up for freedom, and that's what the discussion will be about today as we move forward.
Yeah, I can hear you like with interruption. Maybe it's because of
I would
the
like Mr.
internet connection.
Sarthak Arslan to tell us a little brief how was Manchuria was before the Communist Party of China took over in 1949.
So,
Audible at all?
can you repeat your question? Sorry about that, because like I guess the internet connection was not really good. I heard your question with a lot of interruptions. Yeah, I can see you right now.
Yes, I think I'm visible now. I can see myself. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll continue. Yes, yeah. So my question is, could you brief a little about how was Manchuria before the Communist Party of China took over in 1949? Just a little bit of history. What the independence in Manchuria was about.
Okay.
How was it? Because it has rich cultural history, so we won't go into the detail, but just a little bit brief about how it was basically.
Sure. So first of all, let me have a little correction on the year you mentioned in your question. So actually, it was not 1949. The year of the fall of Manchukuo, that was 1945 to Soviet Union, not directly to Chinese Communist Party. So Manchukuo was founded in 1932 with the true will of the people of Manchuria. We were set up as a constitutional monarchy formally in 1934. And after that, Manchukuo started to be a civilized nation with the gradual development in terms of political, economic, cultural, and social system. Back in 1940s, Manchukuo was one of the most industrialized nation in East Asia. And I think you have heard the term of Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity, which was firstly promoted by Japan, and Manchukuo was a key nation in the system of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity. So basically, that was the idea of international community in Greater East Asia back in late 1930s and 1940s. And Manchukuo was one of the foundation states in Greater East Asia co-prosperity idea and regional international system. And in 1941, with the mutual defense we had with the Empire of Japan, we declared war to the United Kingdom and the United States, right with Emperor Showa in Japan declared war against Britain and USA on December the 8th. And in August 1945, Manchukuo was attacked by the Soviet Union, and then it came to the fall of the nation. So that's basically a brief history of Manchukuo before its fall. And from 1945 to 1949, Manchukuo was firstly occupied by the Soviet Union, and then the Chongqing regime of the Republic of China. And then, as you mentioned, from late 1948 to 1949, the entire Manchuria was transferred to the People's Republic of China later, the Chinese Communist Party. So that's basically a history of Manchukuo's founding and also its fall to the Chinese Communist Party today. Thanks.
We want to seek your pardon, sir, because there's some issue with our former moderator's internet connection. So I'll be taking it over from here. And that is really a very interesting history. And I think people should know more about Manchuria. It's a very interesting history from Japan over to PRC. And no other country has such a transformation as Manchuria had it. So, with that in mind, we would like to go on to the next question. We all know that China does whatever it does with some intentions in mind, and those intentions are always very evil. So, even while it occupied, Manchuria, it had some evil intentions in mind. Would you like to shed some light on those intentions? Why do you think PRC invaded Manchuria the way it did? So, if you would like to elaborate a little on that, sir.
Okay. So basically, for the communist occupation in Manchuria, that has a very long history, even before the fall of 1945. Back in 1930s, the international communist movement, initiated by the Soviet Union, was very strong, especially in East Asia. They had intention to infiltrate Manchuria, or even more, to take over Manchuria back in early 1930s. So that was actually why the Manchuria incident happened on 18th September 1931. Even before that, in 1920s, late 1920s, Soviet intervention in Chinese Civil War was well known to the world. In 1929, since the Chinese warlord based in Manchuria, Zhang Zuolin, he killed many communists in Peking, in the Soviet embassy in Peking. And the Soviet, for them to take revenge, they assassinated Generalissimo Zhang Zuolin on his train back to Manchuria on June the 4th, that was 1928. Sorry about that. It was not 1929, 1928, 1 year before that. In 1929, his son, Zhang Xiaoliang, who was a very pro-communist warlord. After his father's death, he succeeded in the leadership of the Warlord League in Manchuria. So he defected Manchuria to Chiang Kai-shek's government in Nanking in 1929, which brought about a high volume of infiltration by the Soviet Union. So basically, we can see from 1929 to 1931, right before the breakout of the Manchurian Incident, Manchuria was under a high threat on Soviet infiltration. A lot of anti-Japanese turmoil were broken out by the Chinese, Zhang Xiaoliang, the warlord, and also the Soviet Union was behind that. And that created a lot of trouble to Manchurian people. So that was why, firstly, after the Manchurian Incident was initiated and based on the historical records, we could say that it was behind the Soviet Union too, because they were the only party in that region who had enough techniques to do tradecrafts, like, very precise detonation of a part railway. Like those kind of tradecraft today, a lot of a lot of spy agencies, intelligence, they could do it. But that's today. If we are talking about the days after, before the Second World War, like around 1920s, 1930s, only one nation in the world, which was Soviet Union, who was able to conduct such secret operations. So basically, after the Soviet Union started, the Liu Tiaohu incident, which was breaking up, exploding up a small part of railway in the South Manchuria Railway near Mokden, the Manchurian Incident broke out. And the people of Manchuria took on that opportunity to get independence from China. It was like we never had a choice to stay in China, to have something called so-called high autonomy. If you are familiar with such term, high autonomy, that was the term advocated by Baron Lytton from League of Nations. But he did such a unpractical promotion because it was already tested even before he came to Manchuria to investigate the truth of Manchuria's independence. Like 10 years even before his investigation, it was already proven that high autonomy didn't work because that was how the Manchurian incident happened. So after the founding of Manchukuo, we gradually established a more completed system, national system, especially the national defense system, political system, legal system. So gradually, an entire system of anti-communism was set up in Manchukuo. So that even, on one hand, it stopped the Soviet infiltration, Soviet ambition of aggression of Manchuria significantly. But on the other hand, they were planning something big, starting with the Lytton Commission. Lytton Commission, a lot of people accuse that they were really not familiar with the uniqueness of Manchuria. Actually, that was emphasized by our friendly nation, Japan, in the meetings of League of Nations. But it's just like, Leagues of Nations had Soviet as a member. Not only a member as the League of Nations, but also the member as the Council of the League of Nations. So it has a lot of, even today's like United Nations, the organizations of United Nations, they all have a very strong influence by the Chinese Communist Party. Why? Because they were a major member. Back then in League of Nations, now in United Nations, they are always an accepted international community member by the world, and which I think is really bad. And using such organizations, international organizations, they installed their ideology into it. At first, they didn't show the world like they tried to take Manchuria or something, because that looks really aggressive. But what they did is they tried to break your mission. Manchuria people want Manchuria to get independent from China. They are saying, okay, according to international law, so-called international law in their page, we are not allowed to do that. Something like that. Trying to make trouble. That was in 1930s, when Soviet communist was not so strong. But everything changed since the Second World War broke out in Europe. From 1939 to 1941. The Western Allies started to think, okay, maybe Soviet Union is a better friend than anyone else. So they were united. And then that's the hard time of Manchuria started. Basically, even before the downfall of Manchukuo in 1945, we were be able to hold on the communist infiltration or even, aggression except for direct combat. And after the direct combat started in August 8th of 1945, because by then Manchuria was nearly fighting against every nation in the world, like Western Allies, communist states. So it was like very difficult, and that was really a tragedy because we never should have, neither us nor Japan, Empire of Japan, should ever had a war with the civilized world. It was a really tragedy. That tragedy, the only beneficiary of that tragedy was Soviet Union, was Communist China. And they took that opportunity, and they took that very well. That's why they invaded Manchuria in 1945. And by certain transformations of the control, right now the Chinese Communist Party took control of Manchuria. So basically, from the history, we can see that they had a long history of infiltrating, even taking over Manchuria. And because of a whole bunch of incidents in the world history from 1920s to 1940s, and they just managed to do that. And today, I think, the number one key measure the international community would take is to correct the wrong from the very beginning. Thank you.
That was a great explanation, sir. One thing I want to mention is that when you talk about a great war history, one thing that comes to my mind is that China has never fought a fair war. I believe you agree to this. China has never been into a fair war with any of the nations. What they have used is always tactics, stealth, and rogueness. So that is how I presume that they have also illegally occupied Manchuria. And keeping that in mind, my next question would be, do you think Manchuria could have been better as a sovereign state if it had not been under this illegal occupation of the communist Chinese regime?
Can you please repeat your question again?
So my question is, had Manchuria not been under the illegal occupation of the communist Chinese regime, do you think that this state would have been better off in many other aspects?
So Manchukuo definitely, like, sorry, do you mean that, like, comparing to be under occupation by the communist China, we should be better an independent sovereign state?
Yeah,
Was that?
Should Manchuria be better as an independent sovereign state without any dependence on any foreign lands? Would it be better as a sovereign state, both politically, economically, and socially, and also internationally?
Okay. So for Manchuria, definitely, primarily as the international law status, it has been already a sovereign state since 1932, March the 1st, the founding day of Manchukuo. It has been an independent state since then, and in China's illegal occupation, so they did a lot of bad things, but they forgot to do one important thing, and based on their interests, they would never do it again. They will never do it because, they will never do it, and that was the procedure of annexing Manchukuo into their nation. So according to international law, Manchukuo was already bound, and it was already independent. So amalgamation of nations in terms of international law, it has to be with the accordance with international law rules. So it cannot be like I just occupy some place and then it's a part of us. No, no, no. That's not of the international law of the civilized world. So they have to take on a procedure. And based on, based on their point of view, their interest, they will never do that. So that's why, people like me, like other Manchurians who wants to restore our country, we are always legal. That is the first point I would like to mention, because it's not like to be an independent country is good or not. First of all, it's like, as a patriot, it's my obligation. As patriots, it is our obligation to restore the nation. Oh, and second, definitely it's better to be independent. Our Manchurian founding fathers had already said that in 1932. Those people, they were the true representatives of the people of Manchuria, and they have already noticed that if Manchuria was in China, Manchuria cannot survive. So please pay attention to the words I use here. It's not like, try to develop in political, social, or other aspect. No, it's about survival, first of all. Manchukuo people under Chinese occupation, actually, they could not survive. So why do I say that? It was already like in the history. After the fall of Manchuria in 1945, the CCP, what did they do? They decided to only use technician officials and killed most of all the other Manchukuo officials in Manchuria. Who were Manchukuo officials back then? They were the representatives of the true will of the people of Manchuria. They were the elites. I'm not talking about aristocrats. It's like elites, like who can protect his local community. Manchukuo officials consists of such people. Most of them were killed in 1940s after the takeover of Soviet Union to 1950, not 1950s, 1950. When China started a war against, the Korean War, when China joined the Korean War, they used that as a chance to cleansing Manchuria, cleansing all those officials. So basically, without Manchukuo restoring independence, we were like, someone who could be slaughtered anytime by any means by the invaders. They destroyed everything, political system, cultural system, everything, all dismantled by the CCP. And if you think those are very old examples, we had very, latest examples. In 2019, we have members of the Concordia Association and some other beloved Manchukuo patriots were kidnapped by the Chinese Communist Party. And on the same year, a famous human rights activist from Manchuria, Dr. Wang Zhan, I'm not sure if you have heard him. He was working in Finland. He was an advisor in the Concordia Association. He got kidnapped when he visited his family in Mukden in Manchuria. Like, just kidnapped based on their so-called laws of national security. So, from the past to near present, we can see like Manchuria's people can never survive. It's about the basic human rights. Cannot even survive with the requirement of basic human rights. So I don't think I need to mention any other aspects. If you cannot even survive, then we have to fight back and restore the country.
That's a very precise and to the point reply, sir. Without human rights, we cannot survive. I would like to go on to the next question since you were speaking about human rights of the average Manchurian. So, in your view, what do you think would an average Manchurian want? Is it independence or a greater share of Manchuria's modernization and economic growth, which has been dominated by the illegal occupation for decades?
Mm. So basically, for Manchuria's situation right now, I have to mention one thing in advance, which is for the situation in Manchuria right now, it was complicated. Like that complication was brought by the Communist Party. So basically, after the takeover of Manchuria, Communist Party, they sent a lot of people into Manchuria, like Chinese, illegally immigration to Manchuria. So like right now, let me give you a very, very vivid metaphor of the situation. If we talk about the residents who live in Manchuria right now, I prefer we don't use the term people. Like we will not say people of Manchuria. Like before 1945, there was no controversies. Like no doubt. Those are the legal residents of that region. But right now, if you say people of Manchuria referring to all the residents in Manchuria, that was not really a good saying because we cannot really sure who is Manchurian and who was sent by the Chinese to dismantle Manchuria's national identity. So a metaphor should be like if you live in an apartment building, just random apartment building in any city in Manchuria right now, you cannot make sure if your neighbor is Manchurian or he is against the Manchuria. So if we talk about general idea of the current residents of Manchuria, like their will of Manchuria's future, that was not really making sense in the first place because a lot of them were sent by the Chinese to destroy Manchuria. So if we leave, if I say this matter in advance, I try to eliminate misunderstandings between us. So that's the first thing I would like to mention. And second, to answer your question, so for a Manchurian's point of view on Manchuria's future, based on my knowledge, in the restoration movement of Manchukuo, we can see most of the Manchurians, they were in favor of regaining freedom from China because China has brought too much pressure, too much misery to this region. So basically, it's like if you are a Manchurian, you will have, it's like in your blood of a national history of all your grandfathers, fathers, even earlier, great-grandfathers, they're suffering under the communist rule. It's like all different aspects. So for me, it's like my ancestors, we had been a part of the Imperial Manchukuo armed forces. So it was like, a bad history in terms of the communist point of view on that. So basically, it's like if you were a member of the Imperial Manchukuo armed forces, or like I mentioned just now, Manchukuo officials, basically, when the Communist Party, they think, okay, they can take advantage of you, they will use your skills. If they don't want to use you, then this history of being loyal to Manchukuo will be a cause for them to persecute you. So that's like a basic idea of that. For average Manchurian, I cannot guarantee that they are really into the restoration movement because the brainwashing under Chinese occupation was very strong. But this word I used a lot, their naive national sentiment was strong. Please pay attention to the term is naive national sentiment. So with that, it's still a little bit far from restoration of the freedom of Manchuria. But they already had a naive national sentiment of Manchuria to fight against Chinese illegal occupation. So the naive national sentiment, I can use that term to describe the average Manchurian's attitude towards China's illegal occupation and to Manchuria. Thank you.
Well, with your kind permission, we take this national sentiment against China to our next question, which is that there are global alliances, as you know, sir, against China, and there is an entire alliance of people fighting to get freedom from China, including the East Turkestan, Mongolia, Hong Kong, Tibet, and Manchuria included. So how do you, as the Prime Minister of Manchuria in exile, plan to take this fight ahead and to nurture this national sentiment that is growing within the average resident of Manchuria?
So what we have been doing is to firstly promoting the truth. So, that's the first of the first. If people are not with true ideas, like the word I just used it's a national sentiment, it's good, but it's still naive. Actually, we have examples in the Concordia Association, in the government in exile, that, if people are only with the naive national sentiment, like they do not learn anything else, they do not correct the wrong information placed in their head by the Communist Party, well, that naive national sentiment cannot take long. So it's like maybe 1 year or 2 years, they will just quit. I'm not kidding, that's the truth. Basically, it's from naive sentiment to mature idea of restoring Manchukuo. The key way matching that is the education of the truth. So that was the first thing we initiated, and we have been doing since the restoration of the Concordia Association in 2018. Before that, it was not organized to promote the truth, but after that, it was organized to promote the truth. That was the first thing. And the second is to gain more international support. Because many people with national sentiment, they were under the high pressure of the communist illegal occupation. They need to see hope. That's a very important factor of, transforming their national sentiment into the real force of the restoration, the international support. They can see it as a whole. Even though after a lot of persecutions, a lot of suppression in the occupied Manchuria, they can know that, okay, there was a group of people in the future, an army supported by the civilized world trying to restore the freedom in Manchuria. For them, it was a big hope. And I have experienced certain examples. They live in Manchuria right now. They have connections with us. And, the hope from the international society and the government in exile of Manchuria, of one day, taking back Manchuria, that was like a very important driving force in their mind to carry out their miserable daily life in Manchuria. And the third thing is the accumulation of wealth, and more importantly, the establishment of financial system. Without that, the first two aspects cannot really carry down efficiently enough to restore the freedom, to to transform the naive national sentiment into real force of this war of restoration. Thanks.
Absolutely true, sir. Absolutely true. So that brings us to the second last question of this interview. What do you think, sir, is the most important aspect that the people of the world need to keep in mind about Manchuria? And do you think the press or the media can be of any help to let the world know more about the Manchurian problem? If you think it's yes, then how?
I think it's no. I think it's no, because I can give you a very latest example is Taiwan. There is a Taiwanese team called I couldn't remember the name precisely. It was abbreviated as ESC, external I couldn't remember the full name. The group was called ESC. They initiated a board game called Reversed Friend. You can search it online. Reversed Friend. In next year, they are planning to have an English version. I haven't got any confirmed information, but they have already had the Chinese version of the board game Reverse Friend last year, and the Japanese version of the board game Reverse the Friend this year. Basically, it's anti-communist, dismantling the China, a game about this topic. And we were one of the first co-developers with the ESC team on the board game Reverse the Friend back in 2018, when the Concordia Association was restored, and we contributed significantly in the development, in the design, manufacture in this board game. But all those media, I'm not talking about the media controlled by China in China. I'm talking about the media, for example, BBC or some others. When they report this game, they will leave Manchuria out of the paper. I can guarantee you. You can search online. Like Tibet, Uyghur, everyone was mentioned except Manchuria. That's why I highly suspect that maybe China has some influence in such media. So, from mass media today, you want to get truth of Manchuria? I don't think it's a good idea. Maybe you will waste a lot of time and get nothing. So my suggestion is for the world today to get to the truth of Manchuria, of Manchukuo. My suggestion is you read the book published by Manchukuo or the Empire of Japan before 1945. So published back then. If you can read, because most of them, they are Manchurian, in Manchurian language or in Japanese language. It's a bit difficult for the entire world people. But I have to say, if you want to get something that is much, much closer to the truth, then you read the things published back then by ourselves, by our friendly state Japanese. You read the things back then that can, leave out the lies about Manchuria, which were promoted significantly after the Second World War. You can just, leave them all out and go more quickly to the truth. So basically the materials published by Manchuria and the Empire of Japan back then, if they are published by the government agencies, oh, that's even better. So I think that's like the quicker or the quickest way to get to the truth instead of the mass media.
That was quite a nice way to put it, sir. I really like the way you replied. Well, I had promised you that that was my second last question. I have one last question in my mind, but would also like to punch one more into it. I would like to know about your views on how a pandemic was planned by the CCP. So if you can elaborate a little on that, that would be great.
Sure. So for the pandemic, there are, a lot of point of views on that recently. So first of all, we have adequate reasons to conclude that the COVID-19 virus is a biological weapon developed by the CCP. However, we do not think that the outbreak this time of the Wuhan pandemic was pre-planned by the CCP, because according to our experts in the government in exile, according to our experts' analysis of various data, the COVID-19 virus should be a biological weapon that is far from reaching a complete stage yet. Therefore, the outbreak of the Wuhan pandemic in Wuhan back in 2019 should be caused by an unconscious leak of unfinished, or we can say semi-finished biological weapon due to the low technology level that China has today. However, after the initial pandemic, the CCP did take advantage of it. And, they used this pandemic to greatly advance their conspiracy of subverting the civilized world. It also includes the economic slowdown you mentioned in your email. Of course, the reason why the CCP succeeded in looting of containing the pandemic was because, it's like what the CCP was doing and is doing right now is like looting in the burning house. When the civilized world is on fire, they try to loot while it's burning. So, and why we civilized world are on fire? Because I have to say a lot of governments of the civilized nations, they were incapable of containing the pandemic. That gives CCP a great advantage to use that and to advance their plan to subverting the civilized world. The vast majority of civilized nations based on ideas, instead of uniting to resist the pandemic, they have used this pandemic as an excuse and a tool to initiate partisan fights against each other. I use the word cat fight to refer to this fight because based on my point of view, it is really a waste of time and it's not good for the people. Like in North America, this has been happening for 1 year. It is very bad for the people's liveliness, for the people's wellness. But that's like the huge problem now. And a lot of politicians from the civilized world, they just sit by and watching the spread of pandemic, using the pandemic as a partisan casus belli to fight against each other. And that's why, today, I think the pandemic is kind of like, it's almost out of control because of the inactive responding of the civilized world in the past year. So, for the pandemic, I think what is even more regrettable is that even though right now it has reached such a terrific point, the civilized world still has fabricated by the CCP, as I just mentioned. At the very beginning, with the CCP's low, that's why, this provides CCP a chance with high technology, with technology of biological science, which gives them a chance to harm the world using such technologies. So, I heard the news last year, France even initiated some more biological labs in China after the pandemic, which is a really bad thing. If the civilized world, still does not realize the seriousness of this problem right now, then more horrible things are yet to come. For example, next time, CCP may intentionally release the plague on somewhere, and under complete preparations on their side. That will be a larger disaster for the entire world. So basically, that's just like my comments on the pandemic.
Very aptly said, sir. Thank you for this very to-the-point answer. Of course, the civilized world needs to hold China accountable for the entire mayhem that it has created across the globe, the Chinese regime.
Yeah, India was and is a friendly nation of Manchuria, of Manchuria. Yeah, back in the old days, 1943, the Free India Provisional Government. So Manchukuo government officially recognized the Free India Provisional Government. I know that in your textbooks of history in India, there was like a term in Hindi, right? But I couldn't say that in Hindi. I just remember the English name, Free India Provisional Government. The head of that government is regarded as a founding father of the Republic of India, and I always talk to my colleagues about Manchukuo-India relationship. It's like, back in 1943, we were there back in our homeland. We were in Manchukuo. And India, or it has been, the United States has been a major protector of freedom in East Asia. And the Concordia Association was registered in United States in 2019. So United States right now is a headquarter of the Manchukuo restoration movement around the world. USA is one of our major friendly states and ally states. And definitely Japan is another very important friendly state of Manchukuo. We had a long history being friends, and actually Manchukuo's founding you cannot take the support of the Empire of Japan government and people from the process of founding Manchukuo back in 1930s. And every other nations in the civilized world, Manchukuo is open and ready to initiate or to restore, because we had friendly states back in 1930s, 1940s, either restored or newly established. We are really looking into making friends or remaking friends with all the civilized nations.
That's a matter of great joy, sir. Thank you very much for considering us and our nation as a great friend of yours. I hope and I also presume that the Indian authorities would keep this in mind and take this friendship ahead. Thank you very much, very much indeed for coming and joining us. This was a great interview, but I think people who are there in the audience might be having few questions to you. This is for the audience. If you have any question, kindly put it in the chat box, or you can also unmute your mic and ask the question to sir directly. But before proceeding on to the other people, I would like to ask a small question from myself, my curiosity.
Sure.
Whatever China is doing, whatever China is doing, it has only one thing in mind. That is the one China policy, or probably becoming the world hegemon. So, do you think by employing this dishonest means of, winning a trade war or winning the several wars that it is fighting, China can ever replace the United States as the world hegemon?
Never. Yeah, it's very clear. It's never, because China's so-called advanced technology, or military forces, everything the world right now considered as China show their advantages, all of that, technology, military forces, everything. That was all from the civilized world. So it's like, without the civilized world being making money over life, do not send any more new technologies to them, China is not going to develop on themselves about such areas. So, and right now it's very clear that the United States, the civilized world, even though I just mentioned in this pandemic they did perform not well, but for cutting down the ties of technology between the civilized world and China, they started to do that already. They haven't finished, but for this process of cutting down the ties of technologies between the civilized world and China, they already started to do that. So right now, I can say, for China, it's not about ever they can be the world hegemon or not. It's about how can they try to take advantage of what they have right now to do something, because they don't have too much window open for them.
Very true. In order to be a hegemon, you first need to be civilized. And China, with or without the CCP, is uncivilized, and that is the conclusion. So I think, sir, Arshi is there. She wants to raise a question to you. Arshi, can you please unmute and put your question to sir?
Yes, first of all, I'm so sorry for what happened. Had no idea about my internet connection would go down like that, sir. I hope I'm audible. So, recently, the leader of the Communist Party of China made a very open statement, and I feel it's like a global concern. I'll state the statement that he said. It was, no one should come under the influence of constitutionalism. And I mean, I think the statement that he's so openly stating, as he, they also celebrated recently this year in July, the 100th anniversary of, their party's development and the formation of the party. What do you think about it? Like, how it's going to globally affect everybody? Keeping in view the kind of illegal occupations they are doing, not just Tibet, Taiwan. I would also like to mention the South China Sea conflict here. So it is not just one portion or like globally involved. It's basically like it's a global concern. Slowly and steadily, it's just increasing. What do you have to say about it? How can we
Okay.
fight it together? Yeah.
So first, actually, I found that you asked two questions, right? I'll answer them one by one. So for China's recently statement, first of all, I think I don't think it's a news. It's not something new. It's just like they try to make it clear what they have been thinking. It's not like what they have a new thinking. It's like their old thinking. They just try to make that clear to the world. Definitely for a reason. Try to fight against the United States. I remember I got another example, very vivid. I have been using that example to talk with the people in North America. That was 2 years ago. 2 years ago on June the 4th. A lot of people were talking about that. And China, I remember China's national defense minister say something about the June 4th, what happened in Tiananmen. And the civilized world were very angry. And I felt like, why would you be angry on some old news, not some new news? Because that has been their point of view all the time. It doesn't like, it isn't like it has changed. When I was, in China receiving the brainwash education when I was young, like it was the old point of view. Like their point of view of one China policy were all of their policies. It is all the same, nothing new. So their aggression to the world, their ambition of subverting the civilized world, it is the nature of communism. It's always there. It's just like right now they try to mention that much to show that, okay, we are at least equal to United States. We can be like, two giants of the world, something. It's like their recent ideology to show their muscles. Nothing really new about that. And based on my answer to the host just now about the technology, the tie of technology. So without that tie, China is like nothing in technology. Like she said, it's like uncivilized in the first place. So for their recent statements, basically it's like, to summarize, it's a repeat of their ideas. It's not like something new that the world should be like worried too much. Like if China needs to be worried back in 30 years ago, well, we still have that worry today. It's just like, it can make our civilized world allies to be more clear on China's intention. And for your mentioning about the South China Sea issue, I have to mention one thing actually that can shows Manchukuo's founding spirits, Manchukuo's basic idea of international politics. So for international dispute, any dispute of land, sea, water, etc., there are two kinds of dispute. First kind of dispute is objective dispute, based on the pre-existing international treaties between two countries or among a lot of countries. Based on pre-existing international treaties, a piece of land, a piece of water was not defined to be a part of one country clearly, then that's an objective dispute. And the other kind is subjective dispute. What does it mean? From the word you can see. Some party, some nation just claim that it's a part of us. Don't care about treaties, international law. They just claim, oh, this is a part of us. This is subjective dispute. In Manchukuo politics, we only regard the first kind of dispute I just mentioned, objective dispute, as the only reasonable dispute. So for South China Sea, unfortunately, it's the second point. It's just subjective dispute. What do I think of that? What do Manchukuo think of that? The answer is easy. Every party considering this issue should be sitting down with enough international faithfulness just to, according to the pre-existing treaty and international law, how those islands, those waters should be belong to. Well, that's already predefined. It's very clear in the history. It's just like, every party is trying to, grab more oil or something like that. They try to bring this issue more serious. So China was #1 troublemaker, but I'm not saying any other party is not a troublemaker. So in this fight of South China Sea, basically everyone who tries to claim the land is more or less a troublemaker against the international law. those water and islands was firstly discovered by French. That's very clear in the world history. And all the international law to those islands, to those seas, it's very clear and predefined. So to summarize, the only solution, or we can say the only thing right now for the South China Sea issue, it's not like who should have which islands. It's every party, how should them sit down and execute the pre-existing treaties and international law. Thanks.
Very rightly said, sir. That is what the United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea says, that China is deliberately avoiding and ignoring the international maritime law. So thank you, Arshi, for your question, and thank you, sir, for the very illustrative answer. Is there anyone else who want to ask a question to sir? I don't really find someone right now who would like to pose a question. But once again, sir, thank you so much for joining us. And Arshi Bhardwaj will be delivering the formal vote of thanks for the day. Arshi.
Thank you very much for your invitation on this interview.
Thank you, sir. Arshi, kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
Yes. First of all, thank you for the answer, sir. It has elaborated my idea and to look it from a very different perspective now, since you mentioned international law. And definitely, I really appreciate that Manchuria focuses on the objectivity of the issue and not subjectivity. Also, sir, I would like to deliver the vote of thanks and Honorable Speaker Mr. Sarthak Arsalan, who is the Prime Minister of the Government of Manchuria in exile. Respected Sir, Mr. Abhishek Ranjan, who is the Founder Director, and our most valued invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of Red Lantern Analytica, and the entire team, and on my own behalf, extend a very, very hearty vote of thanks to all the speakers for gracing your important work and sharing with us your findings and opinion today. It matters. It is always a great pleasure to listen to your wise words and learn so much from them. Today wasn't an exception. We are extremely grateful to you for touching on the subject of the illegal Chinese occupation of Manchuria through the excellent presentation that you have demonstrated. It has created immense awareness amongst the new learners and aspiring researchers in this field, and it would be our immense pleasure to invite you over and over again to spread awareness as it's needed around the subject in the near future. Thank you so very much once again, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. And with this, with your due permission, sir, we would like to sign off for the day.
Okay. And before signing off, actually, I have a question on your team. I was expecting that I would answer the questions, many questions, like you mentioned in the previous email. But it looks like it was not so matching of it. So before this interview, I have already discussed with my colleagues that for the questions you mentioned in your email sending me earlier this week, for those questions, I have prepared answers. So if you can allow me that, may we, the government in exile of Manchuria, publish the question and answers on our end.
That is to the discretion of our founder director, sir, Mr. Abhishek Ranjan. Abhishek, sir, would you like to comment on what sir said? Abhishek, sir, are you there? Sir, with this query, and we would get back to you through a reply through the email. Would that be all right with you, sir?
Yeah, that's all right.
All right. As soon as possible, we will revert back to you with an email, sir.
Yeah, because like the reason why I asked this question is, I think the questions you mentioned on the previous emails, they are very good questions. And especially for something like you mentioned, question, how can we in simple terms define the aspect of no party, no bias and its importance? Like for such questions, I think it's very necessary for the world to know the answers of these questions, to try to reduce the misunderstandings of Manchuria since 1930s. So, like I asked the question about if we can publish the question and answers on our end based on this reason, try to reduce the long-term misunderstanding of the truth of Manchuria. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. We would definitely revert back to you with the email, sir. And then we can discuss over this. And so with this and with your due permission, can we sign off for the day?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, the director, and thank you, everybody, all those who have been behind this entire event to make it successful. We would like to invite you over and over again for our future talks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.